Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome to a Good Friday edition of Illumination. Today is March the 25th, Good Friday, and today we're going to be going over some interesting tech news as well as some movie type news. In techie type news, Apple has just concluded their spring 2016 keynote, and there they launched the iPhone SE, the iPad Pro 9.7, as well as a couple of new Apple Watch bands. The iPhone SE, for all intents and purposes, replaces the iPhone 5S in its hierarchy of iPhones. However, unlike the iPhone 5S, this new iPhone SE has a smaller 4-inch Retina display. It does look exactly like the 5S though, so you'd be forgiven for mistaking it from afar. However, upon closer inspection, it is a much smaller phone. Owing to the fact that it's a much smaller screen, it now only measures 4.87 inches tall, 2.31 inches wide, and 0.3 inches deep. In fact, the internals of this new phone come from the iPhone 6S. You've got that great iSight camera capturing 12 megapixel stills as well as 4K video. You also get that Apple A9 chip, which does all the heavy lifting for the processor. All these enhancements come together to give this phone reportedly longer battery life. Apple is reporting a 14-hour usage on 3G. Initial impressions seem to say the same, however, only time can truly tell if this new phone can live up to that promise of a longer battery life. All in all, though, that smaller overall size results in better palmability and definitely is a huge boon to one-handed usage. With all these enhancements as well as upgrades internally speaking, you're looking at one of the fastest phones in this screen size. Understandably, though, the phone itself is very underwhelming. A lot of fans were not impressed with what Apple released this past Monday. A lot of people were calling out and expecting this phone. However, they were also expecting a brand new design. Instead, Apple opted to use the iPhone 5's tried and tested external design. And one other thing that seems to be pushing against the norm here is that new 4-inch screen harkens back to the days of 2009-2010. Media consumption will definitely be affected. However, texting and email I should expect shouldn't be affected by much. The iPhone SE comes in all your typical iPhone colors. You have silver, gold, basic gray, and rose gold, which I still contend looks pink. There are only two configurations this time around. There's a 16GB version up for grabs for $399 and a 64GB version for $499. A lot of people are arguing that 16GB is not going to be enough in this day and age. However, for people looking for a budget option for an iPhone, definitely that's something that they can now check out. The iPhone SE starts shipping March 31st. The iPad Pro 9.7 edition is pretty much a step in the same direction for Apple. Last year, Apple released the behemoth 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and this year they're releasing a smaller model. This now replaces, in its hierarchy of iPads, the iPad 3. Interestingly enough, this new iPad Pro will share the same screen size as the iPad Air 2, so there might be some confusion there. However, what isn't confusing at all is the fact that this iPad is designed with productivity in mind. Internally, this iPad is upgraded significantly. It now uses an A9X processor for its main CPU, and you also get the now standard in all Apple devices 12 megapixel iSight camera. There are other productivity related enhancements and accessories to be had though. Primarily, the screen of the iPad Pro boasts a 25% bigger gamut, meaning the screen itself can show 25% more color than your typical iPad. Additionally, there's also support for the Apple Pencil, meaning you can use the Apple Pencil to doodle on the new iPad Pro itself, and it also has an optional keyboard accessory which we can use to type with ease. So instead of using the on-screen keyboard, you now have a cover/case which acts as a keyboard. All these performance enhancements and accessories in mind leave me thinking that Apple definitely wants to position the iPad Pro as a definite laptop replacement. With the pricing of the iPad itself, base 32GB model starting at $599, going all the way up to $899 for the 256GB edition, adding in the cost of the Apple Pencil as well as the Smart Keyboard, which come in at $99 and $150 respectively. Even the most basic configuration of this iPad Pro already has you up there with the price of a decent laptop, and it really depends on what kind of work you do. If most of your work can be done without a lot of internal storage and you really want to be able to do or to use that Apple Pencil for sketching or whatnot, definitely this is an option you can now check out. The iPad Pro 9.7 starts shipping March 31st as well. In the realm of the Apple Watch, you're now also getting a couple new wristbands to choose from. Interestingly enough, Apple has also reduced the price of the base model for the Apple Watch down to $299. So you still get the same six colors of the original Apple Watch in the 38mm and the 42mm variants. However, it starts now much cheaper, and definitely you have a lot more colors to choose from in terms of the watch bands that you can pick. All in all, now you have 13 different sport bands, ranging in color from white to lilac to mint. You now also have 7 all-new woven nylon bands, ranging in color from gold red all the way down to pearl. 2 new leather bands for a total of 9, ranging in color from saddle brown to midnight blue. You also have your 3 leather loop bands, ranging in color from midnight blue, white, and stone gray. The Milanese and link bracelets now come in space gray as well as its original silver color. There's an interesting underlying conversation to be had here about Apple as a company. In the days of Steve Jobs, his mantra was always about simplifying things, or simplicity. Steve was of the mind that they should whittle down the products to what customers should really want, focusing on the development of 1 or 2 good products and then getting those out onto the market. However, with these recent developments with the iPhone SE and the Apple Watch, there now seems to be too many screens in Apple's lineup. To illustrate, and I've listed these down, there are 2 separate Apple Watch versions, a 38mm and a 42mm variant. There's a 2.5-inch iPad Nano. There are 2 4-inchers in the iPod Touch and the iPhone SE. There are also 2 4.7-inchers in the iPhone 6 and 6S. The 6 Plus and the 6S Plus are 2 different 5.5 inchers. The 7.9 inch category is also filled with 2 separate devices, an iPad Mini 2 and iPad Mini 4. That's now 11 devices total. There's also a 9.7 inch iPad Air 2, and there's also the 9.7 inch iPad Pro, which was just released, and finally 12.9-inch iPad Pro released last year. This is not even counting the different configurations of iMacs and MacBooks and MacBook Pros that they support. And that's really interesting to see, because if anyone looking at it from an outside perspective, that's a very Android-y range of screen sizes, and I'd be of the mind to think that Steve Jobs is kind of rolling in his grave right now. But with new leadership definitely comes new vision, so we'll just have to wait and see if Apple's new strategy pays off in the long run. And now for some movie type news. Actually, this one will come in the shape of a question. As you may or not know, Batman vs Superman is coming out this weekend. In the US, it's already released on the 25th of March, and tomorrow, March the 26th, it's going to be released here in the Philippines. And as of right now, the initial impressions seem very divisive. Zack Snyder is at the helm of this movie, and he is one of the most polarizing directors of our time. It's always either people love him or people hate him. There's very little middle ground here. There's a very interesting turn of events. Critics at the moment seem to be piling on the hate for Batman vs Superman, calling it one of the slowest, darkest, sloggiest movies they've had to see in a long time. Fans, however, have been very vocally excited about the movie itself. On IMDb, it currently holds a score of 7.7, a little bit lower than what I expected it to have on its opening weekend. It also holds a Metacritic score of 44, and on Rotten Tomatoes, the critics have been giving it a 31% rating. However, the fans have been giving it a 74% rating. So again, there's this huge disparity between what moviegoers think of Batman vs Superman and what the critics say about Batman vs Superman. The general trend is that critics seem to dislike the movie, or the main complaints really being that it's too slow, it's too dark. The Verge even goes as far as to call it a very expensive reaction video to what happened in the ending of Man of Steel. Most critics on Rotten Tomato also have very similar sentiments. They're saying that the movie's too exhausting to watch, there's too much talking with very little payoff, there's a lot of philosophizing and talking about feelings and stuff. There's also people calling it out for too much CGI, but what can you really expect? It's a Batman and Superman movie. There's also digs at the technical aspect of the movie, that they're saying that the storytelling is non-existent. There's also really weird but very consistent complaints about the sound being too loud for the most part. There's also some complaints about the performances of the actors, specifically focusing in on Jesse Eisenberg's portrayal of Lex Luthor, for the most part saying that it's very flaky, not consistent. Sometimes, he shows that he's a mad genius, or that he's a misunderstood genius. More often than not, though, he just comes off as this manic character, not really having that sort of gravitas people I suppose expect from a character of Lex Luthor. There's also a very common complaint among critics saying that the movie is not very much fun to watch, comparing it primarily to the Marvel movies, because that's what this is coming up against. Though I have to say that the DC movies have always been a bit about being gritty, being dark, and to compare it to a Marvel movie is kind of unfair, and it's not the direction I think DC is taking remaking their entire cinematic universe. And the primary villain here, or the primary antagonist, is going to be Doomsday, and a lot of people are saying that the performance or the portrayal of Doomsday isn't really that great at all. Fans, however, have lots of positives to say about this movie, primarily about some of the main characters. They're saying Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman was great. She really stole the show, apparently. Ben Affleck's Batman is also pretty on point, though there are some people complaining that he was being played as a very one-dimensional character, though that's a very arguable point. Some people just don't like Ben Affleck. He rubs them the wrong way. So, you know, on the topic of Ben Affleck's Batman, there's also a huge compliment being played here that Ben Affleck's Batman actually does some detective work. How much he does is not really clear. If it's enough to warrant a comment, then definitely there must be some detectiving going on here. Also, there's also the big promise of the DC cinematic universe, and there's call-outs to a lot of different superheroes in the background. The byline of the movie is Dawn of Justice, and for those that don't know, the DC equivalent of the Avengers is called the Justice League, and this movie works to set that up. So I can only hope that DC doesn't really get any cold feet about making their new cinematic universe, and they don't plan another reboot with these characters. I hope they go at least 5 or for a total of 5 movies with these new characters that they're introducing in this new mythology before they start reshuffling any players. So I guess the question here is, are you going to be watching Batman vs Superman in the cinema? Personally, I know I am. I'm going to be watching it probably next Monday or Tuesday, but definitely I'll be catching it in the cinema just for the fact that it's a Batman vs Superman movie. I've been waiting around for this a long time, or I want to experience firsthand how DC plans to open up their cinematic universe. I'd like to know in the comments down below, are you guys going to be watching these Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice in the cinema, or are you just going to pass and wait until it comes out on your, video on demand service of choice? Again, let me know in the comments down below. If you've already seen it, don't spoil it for anyone. I'll be uploading a reaction video, a sort of mini review once I'm done watching it. So we'll talk about it then. Okay? Once that's up, I'll put a link down below or maybe up here, something. So I guess that's it for today's edition of Illumination. I hope you guys are having a safe Holy Week so far. And as always, I'd be very grateful if you guys went ahead and clicked the like and subscribe buttons below. Also, leave comments for what you liked, what you didn't like in this video, and for any video ideas you might want me to do in the future. I guess that's it for today. Stay safe and stay illuminated.